Hello, I'm Yossi Abram, and welcome to CX Tech Talk, sponsored by Zappix. This is a conversation where we are talking about how to bridge the gap between AI and customer experience. I'm very happy to host Michael Pace today. Mike is the president of NECCF, the Northeast Contact Center Forum. He was also the 2022 CCW Contact Center Leader of the Year and the former Vice President of Global Member Services and Operations at Personify Health and Virgin Pulse. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Yossi. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So before we start, can you share a bit about your background and experience?
Sure. So, most recently I was with Personify Health. It was a Virgin Pulse company. Led a team of around about 600 folks. Turned around the business twice as we've had different acquisitions and been part of acquisitions. Took a couple of what I would consider immature, nascent contact center experiences and brought them to world class. Before that, I was a consultant. Struck out on my own, did a lot of work with luxury retail. So worked with a lot of big names in high fashion, and cut my teeth for almost 10 years with Capital One before that, and Constant Contact, building some very early service, using social media for customer service type of things, which led to consultancy, and here I am. At this point now, exploring what my next new adventure will be, which is, both scary as anything and also incredibly exciting at the same time. So that's kind of how I got to here.
Okay, great. Thanks. And as we're talking about AI, and I love this, to ask people, how, if you needed to explain AI to your mother or grandmother, how would you do it?
Yeah, that'd be funny talking to my mother-in-law, especially about this. But I'd say there are tools that help could do one of two things. I think help you take the facets that you currently have and make them better. Example being really simple Chat GPT or OpenAI. Here's a letter I'm thinking about writing, help me write it better. Here's something I'm experiencing now. Here's my resume. How can I make this better, right? But I think the second piece, which is probably the bigger one, which is really what it's about, is machines that are able to do the work or the steps that a human can do. And as it's grown, it's becoming more and more personable type of thing. So if you need a process, or you need a widget to move from A to B to C to D, and you used to have kind of people taking you through that process or helping you out with things or finding very simple information, the machine will be able to do that. And especially with both on the chat side and on the voice side, it's becoming more and more like a person.
Yeah.
And there's obviously efficiencies that can save companies money by doing it that way.
Okay.
I don't know if she would still. I'm not sure she would still understand it, but
yeah.
we'll
I always like to say it's giving robots some human capabilities, and like listening, hearing, in the future maybe thinking, and we're doing it now with ChatGPT likes and so on. And what was your personal and professional experience with AI, and how has it grown over the last probably 3 to 5 years? It's probably rapidly changed.
I think I started really thinking about it, really kind of around the time I met you guys, about 3-4 years ago. Thinking, I saw our business becoming more complex, and what kind of ways could I insert technology to make it easier for the customer to help them become more successful in whatever they were doing. right? Whether it was their wellness journey or, their retail shopping journey or whatever the case was. And so, a lot of it was at the beginning, just what is this? I think AI felt seemed like a lot more robotic process automation at first.
Yes.
Now we're all the way to, agentic AI and, quote unquote, thinking sort of machines and such. And it'll go a little bit to talk about, when we think about like implementing it, but, learning about it, slight implementations, dipping the toe into the water, kind of moving to, I felt, chat, kind of chat AI was the more simple and sort of base version and something that customers seem much more comfortable with.
Yes.
And then started moving down the process of, different voice and, different ways to leverage the, whether you want to call it the agentic AI or the cognitive AI or, those type of things toward the end here.
Okay. And are there examples you can share of how you leveraged AI in your past role? Different examples, both for agents, for end users, and so on.
Yeah. So, obviously we were a big fan of Zappix early, and and that in place, it's sort of the first sort of dipping our toes into kind of understanding things and how it worked. To take care of really simple, basic processes, right? For us, it was logging in, right? People, you think that your login process is easy, but as soon as you're missing a password or whatever, you don't understand or you can't get through the password type of stuff, there's generally a sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of step type of thing you need to do. We realized, pretty early on with, sort of the low impact or like impact to the rest of our infrastructure that Zappix had, and kind of put them in and put that simple, kind of stuff in. We progressed to chat, leveraging chat, with an AI answer. That was predominantly based off of our FAQ library, which had around 2,000 different articles that help you kind of walk your way through things. And then later on, like I said, we were the strategy became more about how do I employ this on the voice side to route calls, right? I have a really my infrastructure, my business is becoming more complex. I don't want to create an IVR that has 5 different legs of trees and these kind of things where I could probably just go with, tell me how you need help, and right. And then sometimes the AI could help you, right? Whether it would be log in or the basic status of something that was relatively simple, and maybe something that was slightly more complex with multiple steps. But then always being able, no matter what, always be able to get to a human.
Yes.
If you really, really needed to. We saw on the chat side, we saw, great, I felt it was great containment. It was around 50, around 50 some odd % of the containment. On our Zappix, on the information we put through Zappix, we saw, great containment of our login, information. Where people needed help, that was well over 40% most months. And then, I haven't really got to the point to be able to measure on the voice side of things, but we were also using it for, I forgot one piece on the voice side was, automation of QA, automation of notes, automation. So the call would come in, we transcribe it, automation of notes. It would also understand the sentiment and dead air times and hold times and all kinds of other things that were really important, that really got into the meat of things, where a normal QA team might be able to do 1-2% of all your calls. When you start using AI, you could literally QA 100% of your calls. That would have moved, the next steps there would be sort of an agent assist type of program where, if it heard a question about how to update an Apple Watch, you might get a pop-up on your screens, showing the FAQ to walk you through it, in those ways. And then, like I said, later stuff would be really, full AI, almost acting as the person to help you handle things, but being clear that it's AI, and being also incredibly making it as easy as possible to have a human interact when you need them to.
Yes, escalation to human is critical in
Yes,
in providing good customer experience. They need to know that you're not going to try to block them from getting to a human, but you're going to try to solve their problem as easiest in the easiest way possible. But if you're blocked, you'll have a path to human. That's the way I do it.
Yeah.
There are many companies are talking about implementing AI, but from your experience, what are the bigger challenges in implementing AI, both from a technical but also from internal enterprise compliance, regulatory, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different, I think, buckets that things fit into. The first is a different kind of AI. I call it artificial intimidation. When contact center leaders or customer service leaders, understanding IVRs seem pretty simple, right? Understanding like what a website does, was pretty simple. Maybe it wasn't as simple in 2000, but understanding how it helped and those kind of things was easy. AI, I think people understand the beginning and understand the end, but how does the middle happen is a lot more complex. And I think a lot of contact center leaders are intimidated by that middle space of, I don't understand. They might not even know what first do they understand that like LLMs or large language models exist? What do they mean? Do I pick one? Do I not pick one? Who picks them? All this kind of stuff. And then how do things connect? And so I think the second piece is, how do things connect, right? Yes. If you have most of the larger CRM organizations or companies are relatively have easy APIs to connect into, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you have your own proprietary information or systems, and are they as API accessible? Is a big question. You have authentication, right? Making sure where the AI is talking to the right person, providing that specific person's right information. And then you do start getting into what you call them compliance or regulatory things at that point, right? Making sure whether it's HIPAA compliant or making sure all the information that's passed through is safe. And I think even in a lot of the larger companies are also a bit fearful about the where AI is, I'm losing the word, but when AI is kind of, I don't want to say off the cuff, taking
hallucinating.
Yes. And then, providing sort of answers. I think, there's a lot of large companies, particularly in the financial, medical, areas where they're, definitely a bit more fearful of sort of that, kind of open AI, generative AI side of things. Yeah. But they are all, I think they are all appropriate hurdles.
Yes.
But also overcome it. Like you can overcome all of them. Some are easier than others, and but they all can be leveraged. And I think we're going to talk about it in a minute. I do think the right way to go into AI. I don't know. Do I think the best option is to jump into the pool, head first? Not exactly just yet. I do think there's a dip the toe into the pool and climb on in.
And how would you do that? What would your recommendation there?
So I think, if one, I do think chat is the most, I don't want to say it's the easiest one to implement because there's always the technical side, right? And providing the right answers. But it's also the one I think humans interacting with chat are most comfortable with it as a channel, right? Yeah. If you start a chat, knowing that that you'll be speaking to a bot of some kind, and a lot of times they personify the bot, right? Yeah. Give it a name and a face and all those kind of things, right? But I think people are pretty comfortable with that. And if done correctly with the right information behind it, can lead to, really, really fantastic results. Like I said, on the chat side, we were containing 55% of our chats. What I didn't mention is more people started using the chat and not using our phone to talk to humans. So we probably had like a 10-15% reduction in overall human call volume, which is our most expensive channel, right, to serve. I do think on the voice side, it's more about understanding the right use cases, whether from an ease of use and an impact, right?
Yeah.
I'll use something like logging in as an example, right? If it is an e-com platform or any other kind of SaaS platform or something like that, right? Where logging in should be simple. Sometimes it's not, right? But it's a high value contact because you need them to be able to log in to do whatever they need to do. But in reality, it's actually it's usually a simple, right?
Yeah.
There's a step-by-step process. And so picking the use cases that where that makes sense. I think in retail, it's your Wizmos, right?
Yeah.
What's the status of my order, right? Yes. Which is pretty kind of cut and dry. And then maybe you move over into returns and some of those kind of things, right? Healthcare could be the status of a claim or the scheduling of an appointment or something along those kind of lines, where there's a lot of them, typically. Relatively low difficulty, and then as soon as you kind of master that and understand understand how to learn to tune your responses and things like that, then you can move over into your sort of next big use case and your next, and then maybe you start moving into complete IVR replacements and along those lines, where you move away from the touchstones and the big trees and all those kind of things, and start moving to really smart call routing that's leveraging both AI for the simple tasks and getting it to a human for the more complicated or ones that might just need a more empathetic answer.
So it's basically a phased approach where you start to implement based on almost on the Pareto principle of high volume, low complexity. Start with them, then move to maybe the high volume, slightly more complexity, and then, but there will be use cases that you would like humans to still answer those calls. Ones that you said require empathy, very complex, unique, and so on. But that would probably be 20-25% of the calls, and not the 100% of the calls as we used to answer 10 years ago. And we see that shift across the board. And talking about humans, how did you manage, or how would you see in the future, really balancing between AI, but still maintaining that human touch in customer service, customer experience?
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading or watching something recently where a company was talking that their AI is becoming more empathetic than the people, actually. It might be actually overly going that way. Again, I do think the balance, a lot of those use cases have things that are sensitive, right?
Yeah.
And understanding, this goes all the way back to the basics of kind of customer service, is knowing your customer.
Yeah.
And understanding, what feels good using AI, like chat feels very normal and kind of natural type of thing. Maybe talking about your specific finances with a bot is not, or maybe your specific health concerns are not, or something that is very individualistic to you, is not, where it is, specific to kind of your needs. But I do think by and large, most, the 80% is, more often than not, the 80%, the very Pareto type of thing. 20% of your problems make up 80% of, or actually 80% of your type of things. And I do think, again, it's finding the right space, the right time to kind of do it. It doesn't mean you need to, move everything over to it. It's more about looking at, the individual cases. I think moving it, in that way. Now, if I was to start a company from scratch, would I, place more emphasis potentially on the, AI side of things? I might. To be able to build that scale early and fast, have people kind of using that, and then individuals or humans are a secondary option, maybe. But again, it still depends on the industry and
I agree.
And the need.
And I think also for the end users that are interacting with the AI, they need to know that they're interacting with AI.
Yes.
And sometimes when I even interact with a chatbot and so on, I'm not expecting any empathy from them. And when I see empathy from a chatbot, I actually feel that it's a bit fake. And you're a robot, answer me. And now when I'll talk with a human being, I do expect empathy there. So I think also, as you said, know your clients, know your customers, and really plan the experience based on that.
Yes, that's the most. I mean, that's the basics of all services.
Yeah,
that principle still really applies here.
And last question, we talked about different aspects here, and how do you see Zappix offerings and what we do? How does that fit with the AI, CX, and so on?
Yeah. So as a Zappix customer, so first of all, I always felt the best part about Zappix was it wasn't hard to do, right? And that goes back to that artificial intimidation type of thing, right? Like, most of the time I'd have a discussion with the team, like, this is what I'm thinking about that we could do, or I think this is a problem we have. I think it's solvable by some type of workflow automation, right? There seems to be a pretty clear 1, 2, 3, 4 steps here. Now, do I understand, how the sausage is made back there? Not always, right? I know that, some data resides over here and some data resides over here, and generally this is kind of how it works. So for me, my favorite part about when I working with Zappix was, it always felt like a low lift, for high impact, right? I think as we talked about earlier, I think it dovetails nicely in with other, if you have other AI components already installed, right? Whether it be, I'll use scheduling as a pretty typical use case. It's hard to schedule something without seeing something sometimes, right? And most people are on their phones, right? Yeah. So, you can go through a kind of an AI front where it's trying to understand what you need help with. But say I need to schedule something, well, it's usually easier to look at a calendar and find a slot in the calendar and then be able to kind of place that. And I think that's one of the super sweet spots for things like Zappix, where you can kind of dovetail and support each other with it. And then there's there was other times where obviously we talked about like logging in and stuff where it's just straight send it over to Zappix, provide them the information, and then let the information let them collect it via a cell phone or whatever the case is, and make it really super simple.
Perfect. So I want to thank you for your time and for your great insights into this topic, and always a pleasure talking with you, Mike.
Thank you. It's fun talking with you guys too.
Thank you.